Chicago's Glock lawsuits being used as ammo to shoot down Illinois' firearm industry liability law. Welcome in, Bishop on Air. I'm Greg Bishop. Like, subscribe, hit that notification bell. Follow me anywhere. Just search Bishop on Air and go check out more at the website bishoponair.com. So we last week talked about Glock, popular firearms manufacturer, being sued by the city of Chicago. The city of Chicago says that Glock is not doing right by the public to keep them safe by having a product that can be easily modified to turn a semi-automatic firearm into a full auto firearm. The National Shooting Sports Foundation now using that in an effort to try to strike down the law that Chicago is using to sue Glock. So let's get into this, all right? And if you follow me on X, you saw this headline yesterday from thecentersquare.com. But I'll just read from some of this here. It says, the National Shooting Sports Foundation is using the city of Chicago's lawsuit against gunmaker Glock as ammunition in its challenge to Illinois' firearm industry liability law. So some background. Last year, Governor J.B. Pritzker enacted the Firearms Industry Responsibility Act that allows for civil lawsuits against the firearm industry for a variety of things. And those things include, by the way, not just allegedly putting the public at risk of harm, but also for advertising paramilitary type of activities or advertising to children. So essentially, Illinois state law and the law that Governor Pritzker signed last year opens up the firearm industry to all kinds of different lawsuits from multiple directions. The governor at the time, he said the state of Illinois will now be allowed to take legal action against firearm industry players that engage and endanger the public safety and health of the people, he said after citing that law. Now, in August of last year, you had the National Shooting Sports Foundation sue to block the law. The group said that the measure is trying to resurrect the very kind of lawsuits that Protect Lawful Commerce in Arms Act was enacted to eliminate. Goes on to say numerous constitutional provisions prohibit states from regulating conduct that takes place wholly beyond their borders, even when that commerce it affects within the state. And the Due Process Clause prohibits states from punishing one private party for conduct of another. And you might hear a little bit more of this idea of, you had lawsuits, for instance, filed against car manufacturers because people were finding ways to break into those cars instead of going after the criminals in Chicago with the high rates of carjackings and such. One effort was to hold the car manufacturers accountable. But regardless, after various procedural motions in this challenge that the National Shooting Sports Foundation leveled against the state of Illinois over the Firearms Responsibility Act, you had the state motion to dismiss the case. And in that motion, they say that NSSF cannot conjure up standing by listing speculative scenarios for future lawsuits in a brief for a motion for preliminary action, injunction, and then say gotcha when the state does not engage with and disavow every hypothetical. That was on December 11th. Now, last week, again, we hadn't seen the state law be used in the fashion that Cook County announced they're going to use it last week, right? So the laws enacted last summer. National Shooting Sports Foundation, they file suit in September. The lawsuit's going through. The state says nobody's been harmed by this law because there hadn't been any use of it to sue the firearms industry, right? So months go by, months and months and months go by. But then last week, you have the city of Chicago announced that it's using Illinois' law to file a lawsuit in Cook County against Glock, alleging the company allows for its products to be modified with illicit aftermarket parts, turning semi-automatic firearms into full auto. Monday, yesterday, NSSF filed a supplemental authority in federal court pointing to the Glock lawsuit. Now, I chatted with Mark Oliva. He is a spokesman for the National Shooting Sports Foundation, and he lays out what the rationale is behind this supplemental authority and exactly what a supplemental authority means for this case challenging the state's firearm industry liability law.
Yeah, the filing for supplemental authority is to show the court that, in fact, this law is damaging to the firearm industry, and in fact that these laws are forbidden under the federal law, the Protection of Lawful Commerce in Arms Act. That prevents people from bringing frivolous lawsuits against firearm manufacturers. for the crimes committed by remote third parties, or people who have no relation whatsoever to the company. And if you look at what Chicago is bringing against Glock, they're claiming that their firearm is defective because they refuse to change the design of that model because people are using an aftermarket product that is illegal to own and possess, and they're illegally attaching it to firearms to commit a crime. So we're talking about people who are committing crimes to possess these things, committing crimes to put them on, and then go and committing crimes further with those illegal owned and illegal possessed firearms. And this is exactly what the Protection of Lawful Commerce and Arms Act says you can't. So the supplemental filing with the Southern District Court is to be able to show them that, in fact, that this law is now damaging one of our member companies, and that the court needs to step in and take a close look at this.
Now, the case originally filed in September. Is the supplemental authority going to speed things up? One of the questions I asked Mark yesterday, and his response.
Yeah, the filing for supplemental authority is to show the court that, in fact, this law is damaging to the firearm industry, and in fact that these laws. Well, we'd hope that it would turn the court's attention that this needs immediate attention. It's a very serious allegation that's being brought, and I think it's important also to understand that this case is not being brought in a vacuum. That we know that the White House Office of Gun Violence Prevention, which is staffed by former Everytown lobbyist Rob Wilcox, had reached out to Glock and told them that they wanted them to change their design. And anyone who's familiar with Glocks understands that Glocks are known for their reliability. In fact, the entire Chicago Police Department uses Glocks as their sidearm. When Glock said that they would not change or alter their design, then interestingly, Everytown for Gun Safety, the gun control group backed by Michael Bloomberg, for whom Mr. Wilcox used to work, backed this lawsuit by the city of Chicago. And again, this is the same city that also sued automakers because criminals were stealing a certain type of auto. So again, we're seeing a pattern here that the city is going to go after people who are making lawful products, making those without defect, instead of going after the criminals who are preying upon the innocent people in the city of Chicago. And now they're doing this with White House backing. And they're doing this by abusing the law that they have in front of them that they passed to allow themselves to bring these frivolous lawsuits. These types of lawsuits are no different than what was being brought up in the late 1990s and early 2000s, which brought about the Protection of Lawful Commerce and Arms Act.
So again, in a conversation I had with Mark Oliva from the National Shooting Sports Foundation yesterday, getting his reaction to that supplemental authority that the NSSF filed in their challenge in Southern District, Illinois, federal court, challenging Illinois' firearm industry liability law and pointing to last week's City of Chicago lawsuit against Glock as authority to say, we got to get this thing done. Look, somebody's already being injured by this law, and it's unconstitutional for a variety of reasons. But what's the impact if this law is allowed to stand?
Again, I don't think that this law is going to be allowed to stand, and even if it does survive, I expect that this would be appealed up to higher authorities, up to the Seventh Circuit, and eventually up to the U.S. Supreme Court. I think it's important to understand as well for your listeners is that this Protection of Lawful Commerce and Arms Act has been upheld by U.S. courts of appeal and has actually been defended by Attorney General Merrick Garland as constitutional when he testified before the U.S. Senate. So, again, we're talking about a lawful congressional law that the president had signed, President Bush signed into law, that prevents these frivolous lawsuits. And that's nothing more than just a basic understanding of tort law, that those who commit crimes and commit harm through those crimes are responsible for those crimes, not the people who make a product that is lawful to own. These products, in this case the Glock handgun, is made without defect. It is particularly known for its reliability, and they're going after Glock, trying to say that they're making a product that is too easily modified, that criminals could misuse it, instead of going after the criminals that are misusing the lawful product.
So thanks to Mark for taking time with me yesterday to talk about the lawsuit out of Chicago and the impact on Glock, and also the constitutionality and the trajectory of the case challenging Illinois' firearm industry liability law. So there will be more that we have to take on all of this, especially as both of those cases proceed. The case in Cook County Circuit Court that Chicago brought against Glock last week, we'll do what we can to track that, but also we'll continue to track the lawsuit that the National Shooting Sports Foundation has brought against the state's firearm industry liability law. So a lot going on there. and keep it with Bishop on Air. Like, subscribe, hit that notification bell, and join me each and every weekday morning here with Bishop on Air as we break down stuff that, I think you probably need to know to start your day each and every weekday morning. So appreciate you guys. All right, stay tuned. More to come here with Bishop on Air.